you've said that Allah created the universe from nothing, not from himself.
Yes.
I say to you, that to me doesn't seem rational.
But look,
But I need to explain it if you stop talking at some point.
No, we are limited to what we find rational or reasonable according to often so many factors. Our own understanding of the subject, our knowledge, our predispositions, our upbringing, everything has an influence on what we find reasonable or unreasonable. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. Let's move it away from the subjective range of, it's unacceptable to you, but it's acceptable to me, right? But that's subjective, isn't it? So let's move it away from the subjective range to something that's more analytical or empirical. Could this Quran, as it's constructed, have come from anyone other than God? And God is asking you that question in the Quran. And Allah is saying to you, if it has, then you come up with where it's come from. And Allah says, and with the surety you won't be able to. You won't be able to come up with anything other than it's come from God. Because at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, they said to him, he's mad. Then when the verses started coming down, they thought, hold on a second. These are not the words of a madman. These are just the beauty, the eloquence, the message is too powerful. So then they said he's a liar. Then when they said, hold on, he's not a liar because he's Al-Amin. For 40 years we knew that this was the most honest and noble of all of us. So they said that won't wash. So then they ended up saying, this is magic. They didn't even realize that they had moved one step towards belief, because now they've accepted that it's not human making. It's not human characteristics. It's not human understanding. It's not human comprehension. They sent the best poet at the time. They said, find out where he's getting these words from. So he goes and talks to him, he finds out the Quran, here's the Quran, and he goes back. They say, is he a liar? He's not a liar. Is he this? He's not that. Is he that? He's not that. Then what is he? Tell us. You're the best of all of us. He said, my poetry is better than all of yours combined. This is not poetry. But the only thing you can say, it's magic. And isn't that amazing? Magic is when you pull a rabbit out of a hat. It's not words. Yes? But when you claim the words are magic, because at the time the Arabs were linguistic masters of poetry, they value two things: the birth of a boy and the birth of a poet. And when Muhammad comes down with his Quran, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they knew immediately. No, pagans for centuries, why would they listen to Muhammad? If it was just any other poetry or any other nonsense, why would they be convinced? Why would they fight on behalf of Islam and sacrifice their lives for a message from a man if they didn't truly believe that, this is not just some poetry, these are not just some fancy words, this is the amazing, it could have only come from Allah, because they understood the language, they understood the way the language, when Muhammad comes down with the Quran, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through wahi, through the Quran, at that time there were some 9 or 11 grammatical constructs of how you could construct the language. The Quran came down and it turned everything on its head, because it didn't conform to any of those structures. It was a new way of speaking the language. And then Arabic, the most eloquent Arabic, changed to the Quranic Arabic discourse, because that became the purest Arabic. How does a man in a desert in the 7th century, herding goats, never known for any poetry, never known for any text, come with a text that till today Allah challenges? If it's not from God, then you come up with a chapter like it.
And I've always been interested in that claim. So you've done a wonderful monologue. You should have been on a ladder there.
Yes.
But
I
be
don't
that
like
as
ladders.
it may.
Too high for me.
I hear this from Muslims a lot. Bring a chapter like it. My question is, what is the criteria that you would accept in order for me to bring a chapter? Not me personally, but somebody to bring a chapter that you would accept, because it seems to me that's an impossible task.
But that test is not for you.
Oh, who's it for?
The Arabs.
So only for believers? Or
No, Arabs.
Because
only for Arab speakers, you mean?
Well, because you have to understand the language, right? If I translate French poetry into English, it's not going to have the sweetness of the message, right?
That's a different position that you're taking, because when I hear that from some Muslims, it's almost like they're asking me personally, and I go, hey, I'll bring you something in English.
There's two criteria.
Right.
The first criteria is for the Arab. The second criteria is for you.
Okay.
The second criteria, if this book was written by any other than Allah, inside you'll find any contradiction and error.
Okay, so it's not that I need to bring a verse. I need to find a contradiction or error.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Okay, because that hasn't been clear from other people saying.
Now the thing is,
Now the amazing thing is, sorry, the Arabs haven't done it, by the way. Carry on.
and there are many Arabs, even today,
Arab Christians.
Yeah.
you know, they're atheists, and the reality is that the evidence is not just about the evidence is not just about poetry or it rhymes, but the constructs that I've discussed with you, the contracts that I've discussed with you, all the facets, you can't get them. And so the question that has to arise is this: how does a man in a desert in the 7th century come up with a text? And it is a very bold claim.
It sure is.
You know, for an illiterate man, ummi, cannot read or write, to challenge the best poets of his time, that if this is not from God, then you come up with a reason as to God, and then challenges them again. That if you can produce a verse like a chapter like it, and he's challenging who? The people at the time who were the best poets that existed, right? And he himself is illiterate. So these claims, this Quran, the way that it's constructed, I'll give you a few examples. One example.
No, please don't.
Just one example. Just one.
I'm gonna fall asleep here.
Just one
Sorry.
example. Just one example. Surah Baqarah, 286 verses.
Yes.
I told you it was revealed over 10 years. Simultaneously, other chapters are being revealed. Simultaneously. The Prophet ﷺ will say, these verses pertaining to this chapter, these verses pertaining to this chapter. And yet it conforms perfectly in symmetry to Section 1 relates to Section 6, Section 2 relates to Section 4, Section 3 relates to Section 2 relates to Section 7. And it comes down to the middle, and in the middle ayah, orally transmitted over 10 years, simultaneously while other chapters are being revealed, and Allah chooses a verse, Allah has chosen the middle ground for you, the middle path for you. Where does that verse come? The word middle only appears once in 286 verses, and it appears in the 143rd verse right down the middle. That's not one example. The Quran is scattered with thousands of examples like that. How does a man in the desert in the 7th century, just on memory alone, he's on a camel, he gets a wahi, he says it to the people, this is the ayah of the Quran and it refers to this. And in those days there's no verse numbers, there's no chapter numbers, they learn it all orally. How does he do it? So these are the sort of questions that I think, if we're truly humble, we need to address, we need to look at. There are many other facets of evidence as well that support, grammar, as I said, the construction in terms of symmetry and concentric patterns and parallelism, and then as a reasonable human being come up to a conclusion as to where you think it's come from. And if you think it's beyond the capacity of human beings, which I truly believe through my investigation, not just following it blindly, even though I am a Muslim, yes, right? These questions should be, I think, addressed by an individual, rather than referring to, what happened at the Big Bang, how did God create the universe, did he do it from himself, did he just say it and it happened? Because ultimately those are not empirical questions, and those questions may never be answered until we die, and then God reveals to us how he did things, right? If he chooses to do so. But what we do have is the Quran, which I say is a miracle, which you can test, because you can hold in your hand, you can analyze, you can investigate, you can get people what they say about it, challenge it, and it's tangible, it's there, right in front of you. And it takes away this subjective realm of, I don't accept cutting off of your hand, or marrying somebody at that age. Those are all subjective things. If God said it's okay, and you can prove that God said it, then it's okay. Halas, finished, no discussion. You understand my point? I've got to quickly pray, I've got like 2 minutes, I'm really sorry. Rob? I've just realised, just look at the sun, sorry.
Thanks.
Should we carry on, or?
To be honest with you, I think Abbas said everything that needed to say, but like I said to you...
It's a shame, because to me it was, he did a monologue there that really wasn't valuable to me in any sense. But I know it is, but you believe already.
What did he say to you?
Basically to look into the Quran, which I'm doing already.
What did he say to you?
Say again?
He basically said...
I switched off halfway through, I'll be honest with you.
Well, there's a video, it's on video, so you don't worry.
Well,
Right, so...
because I'm more important. Okay, you go. No, you were going to say something.
I don't mind.
Oh.
You listened a long time.
Because that's where I think you're very good. You have a conversation. You went into a monologue there about the Quran, and
No, he's excited because he hasn't been to speak Quran for a while, and he's been studying this.
Yes, so
Mashallah.
he's very happy.
I learned so much there, it's unreal.
That stuff there.
That was for me.
Yes, no, that's perfect. But that stuff needs to be interrogated by people who are experts in that field to begin with. So I personally don't have the.
No, what you can do though is go to experts in the field and see what they say about it.
Correct, which I would do, and particularly the critics. I will look at what the people say, and I look at the critics and go.
And also, when you have to also look at the critics, because obviously there's bias.
But there's bias both ways, and I would suggest that there's more bias
Well, this
potentially.
guy wasn't a Muslim, and this is what he said to you initially.
I didn't hear that.
Basically, the guy wasn't a Muslim. He was an expert on poetry and all this, and then by studying Arabic poetry, he eventually got to the Quran, and then he realised that this Quran cannot just be Arabic poetry, and thus then he embraced Islam.
Right. So
basically, he
the
was
linguistics
like
convinced
he was
him.
like you. But he was into the poetry of it, and then when he realised that this book can be from none other than God, he embraced it. Okay. You obviously haven't done that intellectual investigation. All right. So like I said to you right now, I said something earlier that you said you can't say that. I said you don't know. And if you don't know, you can't say I'm wrong.
No, but we can say, is it reasonable to believe X or Y?
No, you can't say I'm wrong.
I can't say you're absolutely wrong, but I don't. But my position is that you're absolutely wrong.
If you don't know, then you can't say I'm wrong.
Okay. So let me give you no, I don't agree with you. No. Let me give you an example and tell me if I'm wrong in this position. If I said to you I have a dog at home, would you believe me?
No reason not to.
Correct. If I said to you I've got a three-headed dragon that breathes fire and that can fly at home, would you believe me?
No.
Would you be agnostic on that position? Would you go, I don't know?
What? Would I say no?
No. What would you be? What would be the reasonable position?
I would say, do you have evidence to support this idea?
Thank you. That's exactly the same for me.
Right.
So I'm not in the position where I say I don't know in the same example. I say it's unreasonable to believe in a God unless we can demonstrate it. Same as the dragon. No. So I'm not agnostic about it, which is what you...
Okay, what is unreasonable about a conscious, uncaused cause?
Because we don't have good reasons or evidence to believe
What's
it.
unreasonable about it?
The fact that we don't have good reasons or evidence.
The fact is that anything...
You're claiming something that is extraordinary.
No, I'm claiming something that follows the laws of quantum mechanics. That
you assert it does. That's the difference. You can't prove it. You're just asserting it. So it fits into everything because you say it does. We need more than that. Because I could say Zeus does the same thing. So now you have God, we have Zeus.
No, that's another thing.
Say again?
I haven't mentioned God.
Yeah, but that's what you're talking about.
No. Rob, I started this conversation with you. Never once mentioned religion. Never once mentioned Quran. Never once mentioned God. Well, you keep jumping on this God thing. I ain't mentioned it. All I've done is science. Quantum mechanics, cause and effect. That's all I've done. Stephen Hawking, Big Bang. I'm on that. I'm with Aristotle, Plato, and Stephen Hawking right now.
You've said to me that I can't say. What was the exact words you used about your view of the beginning?
I'm saying if you don't know, let's say you don't know how it began.
Yes.
And I say it began with an uncaused cause, conscious.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because you don't know, you can't say my understanding is wrong.
I don't say it's wrong. I say it's unreasonable to believe until there's good evidence or reason. There's a difference.
All right. Now, I think it's reasonable to believe that. Why?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, everything that begins to exist requires a cause. 2, the universe began to exist. 3, therefore, requires a cause.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with the cosmological logic. A lot of it. Number one, the first premise.
It's good though, because I want to test this.
Yeah, exactly. The first premise.
What's the first premise?
Okay, so
everything that begins to exist requires a cause.
Right. How many things have begun to exist?
Do you agree with that?
Yes. And how many things have begun to exist?
I explained earlier.
One thing, just the universe.
No,
Nothing else has begun to exist.
I said it. I disagree.
Okay,
with
so
you.
that's
my
where
apple crumble in the oven began to exist.
You're using the word incorrectly. This is a
what
huge
do you mean?
objection to the Kalam.
Okay.
Because the apple crumble was what before the apple crumble? It was other things. It's been transformed into the apple crumble. It has not begun to exist
Did
like
the
the
apple
universe.
crumble exist?
What do you mean by the apple crumble? You mean the cake, the thing itself?
The apple crumble.
That did not exist, but the
Did the apple
particles, not the apple crumble, the particles existed prior.
Did the apple crumble?
They have been transformed.
Did the apple crumble exist?
No.
It didn't.
Not in those words. What was before the apple crumble?
Did it?
What's happening with the Kalam is he's equivocating, and this is of course William Lane Craig. You guys are borrowing that. Originally it was the Muslims. He's tweaked it. Everybody's borrowing William Lane Craig's Kalam cosmological. The problem is he's equating that first premise and saying everything that begins to exist has a cause. The only thing that began to exist in that way is the universe. Because I I know the argument.
I haven't mentioned.
No, I know you haven't, but I know this argument, and I know that there's valid objections.
I want to follow this argument through just quickly. So, this apple crumble, did it begin to exist?
The word apple crumble did not. That apple crumble in that sense did not begin to exist.
Did the apple crumble in my oven begin to exist? So, before I made it?
Did it begin to exist before you made it?
Did it begin to exist, or did it always exist?
No, it existed in other forms.
Did the apple crumble exist?
The word apple crumble, no.
In that form?
Correct.
It didn't?
No.
It began to exist in that form.
When you transform other components, it began to exist.
And who caused that?
Guessing you did.
Could it have begun to exist without?
The label we give to apple crumble, no.
Could it have randomly become that?
As far as we know, no.
Well, you said you can. You said
no. You said the apple crumble.
Well, you said quantum mechanics can randomly.
So why are you talking about quantum mechanics with apple crumble?
I'm talking about atoms here.
You're conflating.
Talking about atoms, aren't we?
No. You're talking about an apple crumble.
Yeah.
We know
so
how
there's apple crumble
made,
in my oven.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't need to invoke quantum mechanics at this stage. Why would you?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because you were talking about the random nature. So the apple crumble will never appear in that form in my oven unless I make it and put it. Will it?
As far as we understand, yes. Correct. It won't.
Well, yeah. So it began to exist when I made it.
You using the word began in a different format than you are for the universe. That's my point.
Forgive me. How do you understand the word began?
You tell me. Tell me what you mean. Okay, so here's the Kalam cosmological that argument. When they use the word began there, it means there was nothing and then the universe came into existence. That's what they mean by begin. You are equating that.
I haven't mentioned the universe. I'm talking about apple crumble.
I know, but we are equating with the Kalam cosmological argument because that's what you gave me.
I'm just taking things to their logical conclusion.
I'm saying to you
I'm showing you. No. I'm showing. See, look, twice now I've done something to show you how the laws of logic show that things do begin to exist.
Not in the way you mean now. It's equivocation. This is not my. Darren, you need to look up this a bit more because you're coming with a Kalam argument, and you said you wanted to test this. I'm giving you some.
No, it's fantastic. So I want to know how you understand begin.
Depends on the context.
Began my apple crumble.
So if you want to use the word begin with your apple crumble, I'm fine with you using that.
Mean?
That there wasn't an apple crumble in the word apple crumble and that configuration of particles. What was it before that?
No idea. Apples.
Correct. There was something else. What was before the universe?
I'm not going to do my recipe about that.
This is the problem with the Kalam argument. That's what I'm saying to you. One of the big objections with the Kalam is that they equivocate on the word begin. Because he says, or whoever says, everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Do you agree with that?
It depends on the context. Because
what's the difference of a quantum vacuum? Yeah, becoming a universe, being the same substance but becoming a universe. And
but who says it's the same substance?
Oh, it's not.
Not as far as they know.
How would you know?
That's what they say.
How would you
I don't know personally.
How would they know?
That's what they are presuming.
How would they know? They don't know.
Who knows? I don't know.
No, do they know?
Well, they have different theories.
So this quantum vacuum, did it become the universe?
It spawned the universe. Let's use that language.
So it's still there.
What, the quantum vacuum? Yes.
So
because we can, as Abbas will tell you, we can see some of the effects of the quantum
So the quantum vacuum is still there and the universe is here?
Correct, yes.
So they're separate?
If you want to use the word separate, there must be a boundary at some point where they are, quote, close to each other, so it's like a border boundary.
About things that we don't know. I mean, no. What we're talking about, because he's saying that my example of an apple crumble is not the same example of the universe. Now, basically, if what he's saying is correct with regards to quantum vacuum, this energy or whatever it was that became the universe, it's just a different form. Yeah.
Yeah, but remember.
But then he's saying he doesn't think it's the same substance. So now it's quantum vacuum. It's not even the universe.
But that's what I'm trying to say to you, that we're talking about things that are not analytically or empirically proven, because even scientists themselves differ in, like for example, even the definition of nothing is not the same throughout all scientists. So you could be arguing against a scientist that Rob quotes, but really you could be saying, but this scientist says that's not true, and that's what I'm trying to say to you, that these are just opinions.
No, but all I'm saying is,
this is not analytical or empirical.
The only point I'm trying to make here is the fact that the logic I'm using is reasonable. Now he's saying it's unreasonable. Now I'm showing him that we know the apple crumble was apples and flour of some kind of different form, and it became the apple crumble.
Yes.
It transformed from.
But Hamza, the important issue here is this: that because it's not provable, it is inferred, right? You could infer whatever you want to believe. It doesn't necessarily.
No.
It doesn't
No,
necessitate.
but you came in late. You came in late.
No, I understand that. The point I'm trying to make, and like I said, this was a test case.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm learning how to do
Test
this.
using you as a guinea pig.
Well, you're an evolutionist. You don't worry about you guys.
Oh,
You are against you
And a
exist.
photosynthesis with gravity.
Listen, that was a long time ago. It was, wasn't it?
anyway,
Again.
stick the props here, man.
Yeah, no.
That's right.
I had to, So anyway,
45,000 hits.
so the
Not that you think
So-
about those.
the apple crumble. So what he's saying is, he says the apple crumble didn't begin to exist. It basically transformed from whatever it was
One
to the
thing to
apple crumble,
another.
which is fine. But it wouldn't have changed from that to that without me. Because I was the core. I took the apples, I took the flour, I took the sugar, and all that. Yeah. Without me, it wouldn't be there. Yeah. Even if it transformed from one shape to another. So, for me, it began to exist in that form. Yeah? Now, we know it needs a cause to do that.
Oh, sorry.
So now going to the greater model now, if this vacuum or the Big Bang when it was a singularity went from that to another form, it still requires a cause.
But again, Hamza, the reason why I don't debate these issues is that, like Lawrence Krauss, for example, says that T equals 0, cause and effect go out of the window. There's no cause and effect, he says.
Yes, that's without time.
Right? There's no time, there's no energy,
Yes, from a scientific point of
Do you
view.
understand my point? But that's one view, right? And then you've got other people with other views.
Listen, I'm not
Yeah.
getting to accept what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't say I'm being unreasonable when I'm just using a model
Yes.
that we can test.
Yeah, fair enough. That's not being unreasonable.
Yeah?
No, but what I said was unreasonable was positing that I can't say to you that I don't know. When I say I don't know, then I can't say to you it's unreasonable. That's what we were
No,
originally
you
talking
can't
about.
say I'm unreasonable to think that this universe has a cause when we know that everything, when something transforms to another thing, it has a cause.
No, but that's not what I was saying. That's not what I was saying. You brought me the Kalam cosmological argument.
You keep telling me I did that.
You used those three.
You keep putting Lawrence Krauss, William Lane Craig on me, and I'm just saying this stuff.
All right, say it again. Say the three.
You've been to Speaker's Corner too long.
I know that. That's why. So you gave me the three of them. What was the first one?
All I said was simple. Everything begins to exist. You then started messing around with the word begin. Right? That applies to the universe. Then I said, did my apple crumble begin to exist? Then you started saying, oh, it just transformed from one thing to another. I have no issue with that. But it couldn't transform from one thing to another without a cause. Me. Yeah? Right. Now you're saying, now I'm taking it to the greater level, the universe, that had a cause. It needed a cause to go from one thing to another. Yeah? And I'm
From one thing to another.
from this quantum vacuum singularity, whatever it
And now
was.
you take on my personal view. Why would you do that? Why aren't you taking on your view? Having this experience to me? Because that's what the
I'm not
argument-
science.
Huh?
I'm not a science man. I told you. I started this whole conversation. Never once mentioned God.
I know.
Never once mentioned religion. Never used any of the Quran to support my ideas. I'm just talking science, man. I'm just going what Aristotle said, and what Plato said, and what Stephen Hawking says, and what Einstein said, and what Hubble says. I'm just going off these guys. I'm not going on a religious tangent here. Yeah, I'm just telling you that model. So looking at that model, for me, it's reasonable to assume there must be a cause. And that cause needs to be conscious. Rob, I have to go.
Have you?
Been a pleasure.
We'll catch up again, buddy.
Yeah, we always escape at mugger time, but just wait to send it.
All right.